Mr. Anderson, right?
Right.
And your background in Faulkner was what?
Well, lived my whole life in Faulkner. I graduated from Faulkner in 1931. I was active in sports, particularly basketball and football. And Hugh Bedient's son was pitching. I didn't play baseball in high school, but Hugh Bedient's son, I think he graduated in 1934, Palmer Bedient, and evidently he joined the Air Force, or some capacity. He was in the Armed Forces, but his plane went down over New York City, Mitchell Field, and he was killed. He was only about 25 years old, I guess. He was a good pitcher in high school, but he was trying to follow on the steps of his dad, you know. And I don't know, do you want anything on the background of Hugh in high school?
Hugh, the son or the...
Hugh himself?
Sure, absolutely.
See, he pitched for Faulkner High School back probably around 1909. It was probably about 3 years before he pitched for the Boston Red Sox in the World Series. And he got quite a lot of fame because in a 21-inning game against Corey High School, he struck out 42 batters.
My God.
And from that, I don't know how he got into the majors, but his greatest fame was in the, I think it was the 5th game of the 1912 World Series. He pitched against Christy Mathewson, who was one of the all-time greats. And I think Hugh was 23 at the time. He pitched that game. And in that game, he allowed 3 hits and Mathewson 5. And I think the score was 2-1, Boston. But a lot of people remember that game, but they don't remember the fact that the series was tied at, I think it was tied at 4 games apiece. They used to play 9 games at that time. And Hugh and Christy Mathewson met again in that final game. And the book that I have home on it has all the World Series games from 1904 up. But in that game, Hugh went out in the 8th inning. The score was 1-1. And I think the game went 10 or 11 innings. But he was relieved by Smokey Joe Wood, the great right-hander. And Boston won the game in the last of the 11th, I believe it was. But Hugh was not involved. He was not owning pitcher. But I don't know whether he went out because he got in trouble or because they took him out for a pinch hitter. I don't know. But and the other thing that was quite interesting was the fact that he relieved 2 of the games. So he pitched. He started 2 of the games and relieved 2 others. So he participated in 4 of the 9 games in that series. And his son-in-law was at the meeting when I was here. Hermie Ames. He married Hugh's daughter, and he related quite a few things about Hugh. He had part of the ring that Hugh gave him, but he told me that Hugh hurt his arm. You see, after that, about a year after that series, he went into this federal league. It was a federal league that was formed. They offered them more money, and I think he hurt his arm. I don't know, he pitched for Toledo, I know. And he came back to Faulkner, and I remember him pitching for the Faulkner Independents around 1927, 28, and 29. They had players you wouldn't remember. A lot of them were from Jamestown area, Hank Johnson. They had Rabbit Swanson from Warren, Budweiser. And they had a catcher, I think Swede Larson caught, and they played some exhibitions against Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords, and they had Jake Jacobson used to run Jake's Restaurant in Faulkner. It was a landmark in Faulkner, and he pitched for the Spiders. Him and Hugh, or Swat Erickson, both pitched for the Spiders for a while there. Then Faulkner formed the Independents, and Hugh pitched for them. Then after he did some coaching for the Faulkner High School team. He'd go up there and pitch batting practice.
No kidding.
It was a good batting practice because he just burned them over the plate, right in the middle of the plate. So he had excellent control, and they could stand up there and not be afraid, you know. But he eased out, and he worked in the Faulkner mobile station for quite a few years before he retired. But I was, as I say, I played with his son some, and
What kind of pitcher was Hugh Bedient? Jump, fastball?
mainly fastball with a change of pace and excellent control. I remember when Jamestown, when Hugh and Swat Erickson both pitched for the Spiders, Swat had a lot more stuff, but he didn't have the control. They always said if Hugh had Swat's stuff, he had been unbeatable. But whenever the Homestead Grays or the Pittsburgh Crawfords came in, you could always count on the game being 2-1 or 1-0. It was always a pitching battle. It was never a slugfest.
Yeah.
Because they had good pitchers too, you know. They were a good ball club, you know, the Homestead Grays. I remember they had the shortstop that John McGraw said many times he wished he could have given him a coat of whitewash. It was back long before the blacks were eligible to play. But I knew Hugh for years after that. He talked to him at the gas station a lot, and he lived in Levant. But what got him the spotlight, I think, was that game against Corey when he pitched that 21-inning game and struck out 42 batters. And I don't know if there's any more I can tell you about him or not. But
Tell me about the 1930 exhibition game you went to with the Swat Erickson pitched against the...
Yeah, that was around, it was somewhere between 27 and 30. That was with the Spiders.
Yep.
That was their semi-pro team, played in Southern. And they brought Boston Braves in for an exhibition game. Hank Gowdy, you know, the great Hank Gowdy was a catcher. They didn't use their first string lineup that day, but I think he allowed one hit, Swat, and that was to an outfielder by the name of Wally Holmes. You remember Wally Holmes? He got one hit. He gave up one hit, and he was a pinch hitter. And of course, then his son Swat Jr. he pitched in the Muni League a lot, you know, but he never went up to that. I don't think he ever got in professional baseball at full time. I don't know if he pitched for the Falcons or not. I doubt it. I don't recall.
He did a little bit, yeah.
He may have, you know. But that's about all I can.
The Spiders themselves, did they play a lot?
No, they played mainly on Sundays.
Mainly on Sundays.
At Southern Park. They imported a lot of players from Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
They had very few Jamestown players on the club. I remember Eddie Crow, Al Geeb from Buffalo. They were outfielders. They brought in a Roth from Altoona. He was a good ball player. They brought a catcher by the name of Dutch Grenay. And there were maybe one or two players from Jamestown. That was all. But they were known as the Jamestown Spiders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the organizer of the team was Billy Webb. He played third base for this team. And they had, well, I think Vince McNamara played short on the Spiders. Went on and became the president of the Pony League. And this Merlin Peterson that was mentioned today, he was a star athlete at Faulkner High School. He lived not just a short distance from me. Called him Rabbit. And, he played in 39, 40, I think. That was about it.
Terrific. You, Bobby, did Hugh pitch batting practice? Sit down. Let's talk to him about it.
Well, let me tell you a quick story. Lawrence, of course, Lawrence was I've gone through this with Lawrence, and I can almost remember the first day we get discussing this I was in 10th grade, and Lawrence was teaching social studies. Now, I'm going to tell a little story out of school, and Lawrence will say, yeah, right, I know. This is cute. When we didn't have our homework done, we'd go into the room and say, Mr. Anderson, what'd Ted Williams do today? That was it. Lawrence would get off and see, while he had 2 for 3 today, he'd tell us the whole story. But we knew we had him for that period. Yeah. We loved it because this guy was the most avid Boston Red Sox fan I have ever met in my life.
It started with him.
Yes, right. And then after I got a little older, we used to meet at Jake's, as he was just talking about Jake's, the local saloon, on Sunday afternoons and Sunday evenings. And it seems like Lawrence and I always got together over in the corner and just talked baseball, right?
Yeah.
And this guy was the most, I love him. I mean, we've always loved him, everybody, you know, that had him in school and, you know, was a good friend. But Hugh Bedient, yeah, I did batting practice against Hugh. He was quite a guy. He'd come down and I can remember him taking our pictures and showing them how to throw a curveball, how to do this. Very quiet spoken man. Am I correct?
Yes, right.
You know? And then, of course, I've got to know Hermie Ames real well, who was his son-in-law. And Herm tells me stories after stories about Hugh. He has many pictures of Hugh in the Red Sox. And he also, remember, Lawrence just mentioned the ring, the World Series ring. And it was not a ring. I'm sorry, it was a pin. Well, Herm's wife had it made into a ring for Herm. So right to the day, he still wears it every day. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
When he threw batting practice, did he have to smoke them?
Pardon me?
When he threw batting practice, do you?
Well, he threw pretty good. He threw pretty good, but he had control, and so that,
Yeah,
you know, you
right.
got a chance to dig in there and do your thing.
He was an excellent batting practice for that reason. He
Exactly.
burned them down in there, and they were
Right, and he'd give you a few tips. Now you got to
Yeah.
turn your hips. You got to do this. You got to do that. You know, you know. It was really interesting to have some guy of that caliber even being around you. You know.
Did you ever know Brad Harkins?
No, I can't say
He knew
that.
Hugh a lot better than I did. But he said that his son, Palmer, would not take advice from his dad. I mean, he tried to go a lot more on his own.
Oh, really?
You know,
Uh-huh.
That's unusual for a son not to take advice from his dad.
probably did to some extent, but he thought I could make it on my own, more or less.
He was killed in the
Over
in the war.
Mitchell Field, New York.
Yeah,
I think it was
Field.
before the war. But
Yeah, I think so
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Because his son was a pilot, his son-in-law Hermie was a pilot. Yeah.
I can remember, but to Cooperstown only once. So I made it a point to look up the 1912 Red Sox.
Oh yes.
And Hugh was back there with his cap off to one side with a big grin on his face, cocky, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, did you see it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
1912, he had a big year. Like
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
But he hurt his arm. That's what Hermie told me. He hurt his arm later.
Uh-huh.
But he jumped to that federal league, you see. But it was
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it fizzled out, see. And
Mm-hmm.
What telling Mr. Anderson that I'm doing this little video now. You get a kick out of this story on Babe Ruth's appearance in Jamestown, and I've got all these old articles and kind of piecing it together, put it into perspective. Anyway, the pitcher for the exhibition game when Babe Ruth came here with his team was Hugh Bedient, and it was Hugh's first appearance in the area in the 1920s. He'd gone to Toledo and but
Right.
hadn't played here, so his coming back was a big deal. Babe Ruth coming here, of course, was a huge deal. Bedient and Ruth played on the Boston team together in 1914.
Right.
Ruth's first year
Right.
was Bedient's last year at Boston. So there's a picture of the two of them together.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And so that was kind of a reunion.
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
And, Bedient, of course, being the star of 1912 was a big name then, of course. So that whole event, that exhibition was a big deal. And in fact, Ruth, during the exhibition, batting practice beforehand, did put one in the lake.
Do you know that back in that time, it was Jamestown Post then, or no, it was a journal. And back in those days, you know, no radio or everything. You used to have the play-by-play in the newspaper when it came out. And the paper went to press probably 3:30 or 4. I can remember my dad used to have these papers up in the attic. And some collectors got this by mistake one day. My sisters allowed them to come up there, and they took it. And I had this newspaper, the World Series of 1912 that Hugh pitched. It was like inning 1, so-and-so grounded out, second to first, and so on. And then it went on about the 6th inning. That's when he went to press. And he retired him in order. I can quote you verbatim. It says, Bedient burned the ball over the plate with bewildering speed, and his curve drop was working nicely. It was just a little note at the end of the 6th inning. And that paper, if I had it today, it would be worth... they didn't know. My sisters didn't know.
No,
They were taking
absolutely.
old newspapers from the attic, see?
Right.
And I used to go up there and read that thing, you know.
Right.
And it disappeared.
Thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
your time. This has been terrific.
You know, it's...
Ties in nicely.